was kind of like a struggle because it was like the peak of the pandemic. There was like barely any work, but the UI checks held it down. That's how I was like basically funding my music. So like I would just use my checks to pay for my videos, mixing, studio, shit like that. Yeah, outfits and everything.
Couple of disclaimers before I start today's show. First of all, a quick look at the lyrics to the songs on Like by Ice Spice tells me that the subject matter for these 6 songs are all fairly adult, to say the least. But more importantly, this EP is of a particular genre of hip-hop called Bronx Drill, and I barely know what that implies. So 100% of what I'm about to say in this video should come with a huge grain of salt. And for that reason, I will display this reminder for the entirety of this video. So with those 2 little caveats out of the way, let me share some of what I found out while researching this album. Here are the 5 things for Ice Spice. Ephraim Lopez Jr. comes from a musical family. His dad, Ephraim Lopez Sr., aka DJ Enough, is a DJ for Hot 97 in New York and toured with Notorious B.I.G. as his road DJ.
It's your man DJ Enough.
Ephraim Jr. began making beats in GarageBand at age 10, and in college he adopted the name Riot USA. Isis Gaston was also from a musical background. Her dad, Joseph Gaston, was an underground rapper. Isis began writing poetry and freestyle rap while in middle school. And while attending the State University of New York at Purchase, she met Riot USA and the 2 of them began working together. She adopted the stage name Ice Spice based on an old fake Instagram profile she used as a teenager. Their first collaboration, Bully Freestyle, was released in early 2021.
Max's card, it wasn't hard. Nigga was feeling that touch me. The way that I move, the way that I walk.
Their breakout hit was called Munch, open parentheses, Feelin' You, close parentheses, which came out in August of 2022 and would eventually make it onto Ice Spice's debut EP. And here is where I'm stepping out way over my head, because the music on Like is Bronx Drill, like I said before. So let me take a shot at maybe explaining what this means. And those of you watching this that are also experts on the history of hip-hop, please feel free to correct me. I'm doing my best here, but I am by no means well-versed. To get to drill, we need to start with trap. Trap started in the South in the 90s, and in fact the word trap comes from trap house, which was an Atlanta slang term for a drug house. In fact, many trap artists adopted drug-related stage personas. Musically, trap beats tended to have like frenetic hi-hat patterns, and the low end and bass drum sounds were oversaturated, highly affected, and often distorted. Similar in some ways to the kind of sonic modeling used in hyperpop. So what you do then is you take those rhythmic elements and add some kind of interesting sounds in the middle space, usually layers of synths. To perhaps put it into references that have a chance of ringing some bells, Formation, the last song from Beyonce's Lemonade album, that's trap. Also, since Kendrick Lamar pretty much owns public attention right now, his album Good Kid, Mad City has a bunch of trap elements. Drill started in Chicago about 10 years ago, and its main characteristic is that the subject matter for drill is much more confrontational, harkening back to gangster rap. The beats in drill are largely minimalist, but they use the same hi-hat and bass drum sounds that you hear a lot in trap. Then Brooklyn developed its own drill subgenre, and then the Bronx took inspiration from there, and that brings us to Ice Spice, Bronx Drill. Ice Spice's rise to national attention happened pretty quickly. She started her rap career in 2020, and by 2023, in the release of Like, she had 2 songs reach the Billboard Top 10. She was a supporting act for Doja Cat's Scarlet Tour, and her music had features from some of the biggest names in hip-hop, including Nicki Minaj. That started a good many collaborations and features for her, including a remix of Barbie Girl with Aqua,
and I'm bad like the Barbie. I'm a doll, but I still wanna party.
And a remix of the Taylor Swift song Karma, and an accompanying video. 0 to Taylor Swift in 3 years? That's pretty damn impressive. In July of 2024, she released her first full-length album, Y2K, which peaked at number 18 on Billboard's album charts. A number of the singles released for that album with titles that would have sent 10-year-old me into fits of laughter. I'll let you look those up for yourself. Many of them charted, but none have yet to make it into the top 10. One sure sign you've made it in hip-hop is when someone has a beef with you, and Ice Spice is no exception. In the lyrics of Princess Diana, there is a reference to another rapper out of Atlanta, Lotto, which resulted in Lotto including references to Ice Spice in a video, and that feud still seems to be an ongoing thing.
There's another line on the album where you say somebody's face look old or something. They gonna
There's also some hard feelings concerning both Nicki Minaj and a rapper called Cleopatra on two separate occasions, but those all seem to be coming from second and third hand sources, so who knows to what degree any of that is legitimate. These rappers and their beeves, and that's the 5 things for Ice Spice. Time to give Like a spin. Back soon with first impressions.
Honestly, I just, like, ever since I was a little girl, I just knew I wanted to make a lot of money. And
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I would just, like, sit there and look on Google, like, how to become a billionaire.
Okay, hear me out. At first glance, what I'm about to say is going to sound like I'm trying to say that rap isn't music, but that's not what I'm trying to say. Let me explain. Yeah, you better. When I listened to Like for the first time, I didn't find myself listening to it in the same way I listen to music that I'm used to. I used different parts of my discernment. Go on. See, after a lifetime of dissecting music for its instrumentation and orchestration, the first thing I tend to do when listening to something new is listen for the parts, the groove, the bass line, the chord changes, the melody, any counterpoint, any modulation, any tempo changes, any time changes. Well, this album doesn't really have any of those things. The beats are very simple, and in fact, they feel to me as if they're performed live. I don't hear much in the way of repeating patterns. It feels more to me like Riot USA is reacting to Ice Spice and constructing the beats in real time from a small handful of sound sources. But that aspect of my experience is a small portion of what my brain was doing. It's Ice Spice herself, her lyrics. That's where my mind goes. I was engaging the language centers of my brain for the most part. I mean, the rhythmic analysis was there for sure, but mostly it was like listening to poetry. And before I look at the songs individually, let me again reiterate that all of what you're about to hear is coming from someone who is not at all well-versed in the finer details of modern hip-hop. For me, it's kind of like poetry. Not that the art forms are 100% analogous, but well, I don't encounter it every day, but when I do, I tend to enjoy it. But at the same time, I also feel like there's a lot going on that I don't fully understand. You know? Come to think about it, you could say the exact same things about my opinion of competitive curling. The first song is In Ha Mood, and normally this is where I'd point out something that caught my interest about the non-words part of the song. I do tend to focus on the non-words parts of songs, but there's not much of that going on. There's a beat, it's not bad, it needs to be there. Aside from the hi-hat and kick, the sounds employed are kind of moody and soft. And where in rock, the singer might cut out for 8 bars or so to feature a solo or some other instrumental break, in this music, parts of the beat will occasionally cut out to emphasize certain parts of the lyric component, or just to make the drop more dramatic when it returns. Oh, and if you listen to the album, you'll hear the phrase, "Stop playing with them, Riot," at the beginning of every song.
Stop playing with them, Riot.
This is Riot USA's producer tag, a little audible signature to tell you who created the beats. I had to look this information up, so now you don't have to. And that's just about all I can say about the non-words portion of the music on this EP. So instead, I'm just going to go over what she's conveying in each of these songs. In Ha Mood is primarily about the dynamic between herself and a potential romantic partner of some kind. She relays the success she's enjoying and some details about her more hedonistic pursuits, but his response is to dismiss her. Like, damn, she in her mood.
She lit, get money too. Like damn, she in her mood.
And next there are 2 different versions of the song Princess Diana, one with and one without Nicki Minaj. In both versions, what you get is a first-person description of what it's like to become popular and successful and rich in the context of the community they came from.
Bitches move on cause they know I got bands. They be chatting, I don't give a damn, and I'm still getting money, I know who I am.
The picture painted is one of aloofness, self-assurity in the presence of overwhelming demands for your time and attention. Zeno would be proud. Next song is Gangsta Boo featuring Lil TJ, which stands for Tion Jaden, if you're curious. In this one, she tells him that he seems like a tough guy and she's kind of into that. She likes the thought of being his girlfriend, even though she's already seeing someone else. She's fully prepared to take the place of any other woman in his life. Then he tells her that, look, if we got together, that might not work out so well. Some of the things that he does, for example, are not exactly above board. And besides, her current boyfriend might make trouble. And if that happens, there would be no guarantees that something rather violent might not ensue.
Never worry about no exes. All on my body, I'm the bestest. Diamonds keep dancing on my necklace.
Actin' a smoochie. A what now? Smoochie. Apparently, it refers to women who like sex, which is seen largely as a bad thing for some reason. And that's pretty much what the song is about. Ice Spice taking the absolutely ridiculous stance that women can be sexual. And since I'm not a woman and therefore not prepared to go into more detail, I'll just leave it at that.
All my body, like, all of my body, like, daddy, he making me thicker.
Next is Bikini Bottom, and this one continues from where Actin' a Smoochie leaves off. Where the previous song was mostly about the experience of hooking up with guys, in Bikini Bottom, Ice Spice also relates that she's equally excited about the company of women.
Things not bad, they be on my ass. I could hear you hating from the back.
And last song is Munch, parentheses, Feelin' You, close parentheses. And for the third song in a row, the subject matter of the song proves that Ice Spice is a cunning linguist. But in this context, she addresses the notion that in some situations, one partner could develop emotional attachments that are not strictly reciprocated. And apparently she doesn't have much patience for that.
When a body can't sit with me, I swear that these bitches my mini-me's.
Overall, well, this is difficult. Like I said before, this music is not anything I would seek out on my own. But I don't hate it. Ice Spice's delivery, vocal timbre, and affectation are, ironically, some of the most musical elements on the album. She has impeccable sense of timing, can work with tricky rhythms like 3/2 polyrhythms, seemingly effortlessly, and she maintains a persona that is consistent and engaging. Anyway, those are my first impressions. Back soon with final thoughts.
I like the sparkly one too. I've had this for a little minute now. Y'all probably seen this in like some music videos. It kind of feels like jewelry. It kind of like just matches and stuff.
I'm not in the smallest bit qualified to offer any criticism of the music on Like by Ice Spice. I don't have enough expertise in hip hop. I don't have the lived experiences of a young woman of Black and Dominican parentage growing up in the Bronx, and I certainly am not part of the demographic that would have been exposed to her viral videos a couple years back. I am a complete outsider to this music. So in any normal video where I try like mad to restrict my thoughts to only those concerning the music, this is where I would end things and roll for next week's album. But if you'll indulge me for just a second, I think what I'm going to do now is recommend that you listen to this EP, and more than once. I say more than once because I know that, like me, most of you are probably outsiders to this music as well, and you'll need that first spin to get the sound of it in your ears before you can start processing what's happening. But there's poetry here. Irony, unreliable narrators, deft use of language. Get me a tissue. Why would I miss you if you was the issue? That's brilliant. And beyond that, an absolutely mesmerizing, disaffected charisma. Hey, you might not like it, but it's only 6 songs, about 15 minutes. And what, you can't take half an hour out of your life to try something new? What's the worst that could happen? So finally, my 5-word overview of Like by Ice Spice. Not my world, but cool. Now let's see what I will be listening to next. First is our roll for year. 1955. Okay, we're in pre-Hot 100 times, but honestly, I can't remember if 55 has a top 10 or a top 20. Anyway, let's go for week and month. Second week of May, 1955. Alright, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to roll both a 10 and a 20 sided die since I can't remember. If it's a top 10, we'll use the 10. If it's a top 20, we'll use the 20. So number 5 of a top 10 or number 7 of a top 20 for the second week of May, 1955. All right, here's what we got. And okay, it is a top 20. So the number 7 track is Tweedledee. And this is another interesting thing that happened in the 1950s. It's the song Tweedledee, but it was recorded by several different people. And it looks like to me that Laverne Baker's version is the one that came out first. So I'll listen to Laverne Baker's Tweedledee. Ooh, a little 50s novelty song action. Well, Tweedledee was originally released as a single, but there is a singles collection from 1957 called just Laverne Baker, and that has her hits from that era, so that's what I'll be listening to next. Thanks for hanging out with me, everyone. I'll see you next week.